What's up, glitches? The first story in today's video is called Time Slip / Parallel Universe, and then we're going to read 9 more weird unexplainable stories sent in by fans. So sit back, grab a snack, and let's get weird. Hi, Auntie. Hi, I love your content. Thank you. I have a weird one for you. This happened to me about 7 years ago. I'm from a small town in Cheshire, UK, and if you've been to the UK, you know in our little towns we have lots of winding back roads. I was driving down this one road with my friend in the passenger seat. It was raining and there were big trees on either side of the road. To our right was a fairly steep downward slope as this road was on the side of a hill. Even though it was raining, it was still bright. Me and my friend were chatting and singing along with the radio. Up ahead, I see a silver car with headlights on come round a bend about 40 to 50 meters away. Suddenly, the sun goes behind a cloud, it gets really gray outside, and I watch as the silver car seems to lose control and drives off down the steep hill to our right. I start panicking and stop my car. I say to my friend, we need to go out and help that car as the driver will have probably ended up getting injured. My friend looks at me confused and says she didn't see anything. I think, okay, maybe she was on her phone and not paying attention. I explained that there was a car that had driven off the road and she told me that she was looking ahead at the road at that time and she didn't see anything. Me and my friend get out of my car and I run to where I saw the silver car lose control. I start searching for this car and I just can't find it. I run up and down the road looking down the hill and I just can't see it anywhere. My friend is also helping me look and can't see anything. There were lots of trees going down the hill, and at the bottom of the hill is a paddock for sheep. I assumed that the car that lost control would either be stuck on a tree on the hill or in the paddock at the bottom of the hill. I made my way down the hill to the paddock and looked around, and the car is not there either. I walk along the tree line from the paddock looking up the hill this time to see if I can find the car, and it's still not anywhere to be seen. I think at this point, maybe I've just imagined it somehow, especially as my friend didn't see anything. I hear what I thought was my friend shouting at me from the road saying, "We need to go." But as I'm coming back up the hill to the road, I see something shiny in the leaves on the ground. I go pick it up and realize it's a wheel nut from a car. As I'm looking at it in my right hand, a heavy branch from a tree above falls directly on my right hand, causing me to drop the wheel nut. I then look back at the paddock and see every single sheep in the paddock was stood still, facing me and watching me. I then hear crows in the trees above me going mad, like really squawking loudly, and it just sent me feeling uneasy. I hauled ass back up the hill to the car and my friend who sat in the back of my car with the window open having a cigarette. We started to drive off when I noticed that my windshield has about 5 or 6 flies on the inside. The window was open, but what are the chances that 6 would come in all at once? I felt so uneasy. After 10 minutes of driving in silence, we finally got back on the main road, and I say to my friend, "You were right when you told me it was time to go," and tried to make it lighthearted to ease the feeling of dread that I had. She tells me that she didn't tell me it was time to go. She explained that when she saw me go down the hill, she decided to just wait for me in the car. I don't know what the fuck I experienced that day. I'm thinking maybe a time slip, but whatever it was definitely not meant for me. Everything was telling me to leave it alone. The weather, the branch, the crows, the sheep, the flies, and the voice. I have looked online a couple of times since then to try to find out any information about accidents on that road, but every time I do, nothing ever shows up. I did a big sage cleanse of my car and my house and tried to forget about it, but I still can't bring myself to drive down that road again as I'm so scared it will happen again. First, I was thinking maybe you were seeing into a different timeline or a different dimension. However, if you went down there and then you found like a nut from a car, you probably saw something that happened in the past, which is a weird little time slip, a weird little glitch in the Matrix. Right? That's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for sharing your story. This one is called Where Did I Go That Night? Auntie Matrix, hi from across the ocean. Hi. That's so cool. So I got an old 90s story for you, and I'm counting on you and your followers to unwrap it. I woke up one morning, I was around 12 to 13 years old, after an awkward, crazy dream that went on behind one of my grandma's apartment buildings, but instead of the garage back patio, it was a massive beach. I don't recall the actual dream, it was a long time ago, just the building and the beach. So I wake up, got dressed, grabbed the closest shoes in the room, and put them on, and there was sand inside. Sand! Not a ton, but enough to be noticed and uncomfortable to walk. I shake the sand out and put them on again. So I get on with getting ready for school. I live in a town near the beach, so I didn't even think about it. I took the bus to school and finally started really thinking about what just happened. It's strange that I walked home with so many sand in my shoes because it would be really uncomfortable and I hate sand in my feet, and why wouldn't I clean it? I dreamed about being at a beach, woke up, had sand in my shoes. When was the last time I was at the beach? Months ago. It was winter, school time. When was the last time I wore these shoes? 2 days ago? Yesterday? I wear these shoes all the time. The sand couldn't be there since the last time I was at the beach in the summer months ago. I wear these shoes all the time. I would have noticed it already. No one wears my shoes. I only have a brother and my mom has tiny feet. What the hell just happened? I told my best friend, but she brushed it off as if it was old summer sand. I took that explanation, but inside, I knew and know that it's impossible. I never talked about it again because I can't explain it, so what's the point in thinking about it? But now I'm sad because I forgot the dream itself over time. Throughout my life, I always dreamed a lot, talked during the sleep, woke up hurt with bruises, tired, all the 9-yard stuff. But that morning was the only time I woke up with real physical evidence that I, or my body, was somewhere else during the night. What happened? What did happen? Because if you're astral traveling, right? If you're doing astral projection and you're traveling around while you're sleeping, your soul's traveling around, that's not your physical body that's traveling around. So how did sand get in your shoes if you were traveling around outside your body? That doesn't make any sense. But it has to be something like that because you said that you always talk during your sleep, you dream a lot, you've woken up hurt and with bruises before and tired. So where are you going when you sleep? But how? It's your whole physical body? I don't really know about that. I'm not sure what's going on here, but this is very interesting. I cannot wait to hear what you guys think. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for sharing your story. This one is called My Unexplainable 22nd Birthday. Hi, Auntie Matrix. Hi. This is probably my freaky experience ever, which happened on my 22nd birthday. It's a super duper long 3 for 1. Ooh, look at us. Before I begin my story, I do need to give a little bit of background. I had a spirit guide that had been with me since I developed some clairaudience and clairvoyance skills at around age 16. I referred to him as Jeffrey, and he pretty much kept me out of any large trouble. He would hide my car keys, and once I found them, I would realize that we would have been in a car accident if I had left when I needed to. He would make a book drop to remind me of a forgotten term paper. He would make the house phone ring once 3 times in a row to notify me that I should pay attention to something that had just happened or was about to happen. That's actually so cool. I wish I had a relationship with my spirit guide like that. A little bit about the town I lived in. It is a moderately sized college town that had a history of some pretty famous haunted buildings, and there had also been a pretty large and damaging fire in the 1800s. Okay, so at this time of my birthday, I was still going to college and spending a lot of my extracurricular time with a small group of friends who all shared interest in the metaphysical and especially the paranormal. In fact, the prior semester I had taken a photography course and I had chosen gravestones and beautifully old cemetery by the river to take pictures for my final project. There was an angel statue that I absolutely thought was the most beautiful cemetery statue that I'd ever seen, and it was very old, covered in lichen and discolored from years of soot and rain and weather. I tried my best multiple times to capture the image of this angel statue, yet every time I tried to print the pictures of this angel statue, the face always went black. No tips or tricks that my photography professor or I tried ever worked at lightening the face. My friends had planned to go ghost hunting in that cemetery for the evening of my birthday. It was January, however, for a Wisconsin winter, it had been fairly mild, and we were supposed to have a break in the cold the evening of my birthday. I was geeked at the idea, but now I really wish that I never would have agreed to it. The evening started out quite normal. We ended up ordering a couple of pizzas and ramping ourselves up for going ghost hunting. As we were leaving, the landline rang once, but hung up before anyone could answer it, and we left. Uh-oh. Was that part of the warning from the spirit guide? We went to the cemetery and parked and started walking around and seeing what we could see. So that evening, I was very interested in going back and visiting that angel statue to see if maybe there was some sort of paranormal activity associated with it. We got to that area of the cemetery and nothing really happened. My friends got bored and started kind of wandering off in different directions, but staying within sight of each other. Shortly after that, I heard a little girl giggle. I turned around to see a little blonde girl in late 1800s garb, and as soon as she saw me look at her, she turned away and started skipping off. And I was calling after her, asking her like who she was or, trying to find out where she belonged, and I started to follow her. Huge mistake. I finally caught up with her, and as I came upon her, she turned around and she was giggling, and when I saw her face, her eyes were fully black. I believe that I tried to back away, but that is the last memory I have of being in that cemetery. My friends saw me collapse and they rushed over and realized that I was no longer breathing. They decided to put me in the car and take me to the hospital. They were trying to slap my face to wake me up. This was in the late 90s and not everyone had cell phones, especially broke college students. I did not breathe again until the moment that we exited the main gate of the cemetery and were on the main street heading towards the hospital. I came to pretty quickly after they exited the cemetery, and we went back to their apartment to kind of decompress on what had just happened. A couple of them were insistent that I should still go to the hospital, but I kind of shushed them and I said that I was fine. After that, I was pretty much out of a jovial mood. I decided to walk home as I live very close by. By the time I had made it home, I was so exhausted I could not even make it up the stairs to my bedroom, so I ended up crashing on the living room couch. My parents spent the time during the week 2 hours away in a different city where my dad was working, and I would take care of the house and live there in exchange for just paying some utility bills. I also need to note that I do not have siblings nor any roommates that lived with me, so no one else was home when I got home because it was the middle of the week. As I fell asleep, I found myself in a nightmare where a very large, dark entity was chasing me through that same cemetery, swinging at me with a meat cleaver. I could feel the cold on my skin. I could see the fog that my breath had made, and I remember the sound of the snow crunching under my boots. I remember running from this entity and running over the ice-covered river, knowing that if I could get to the other side, I would be safe. I kept slipping and tripping, but was still trying to get away from this entity when I heard a terrible crack, and I felt my boot punch through the ice. Almost immediately, I started sinking into the river, and a moment before my head went underwater, I looked up and saw the entity's cleaver swinging down towards my head, and I felt a yank on my ponytail. This is when I woke up. My feet were cold and wet, and my ponytail was lying on the pillow beside me, completely cut off. As I grabbed my ponytail off the pillow, I reached out energetically to Jeffrey and didn't feel him at all. I tried every way I knew to try to reach him, but it felt like there was an impenetrable wall that was between me and his energy. To this day, I have never been able to reach him. He has never made a phone ring or done any other myriad of small things he used to do to make me aware of his presence. I have never felt easy driving past, let alone walking into a cemetery since, and I definitely no longer go looking for ghosts. Thanks for giving us all a platform to share our unexplainable stories for them to be believed. Yes, you're welcome. This was such a good story, so well written. And oh my God, I knew once you said that the face of the angel was black when you were trying to photograph it, I was like, something is off about this angel. 100% there's something evil like attached to this statue. And then that little girl, and then everything went black. Like, what happened? What happened? Is something attached to you now? Have you had any nightmares since? Have you had anything bad happen since? I'm wondering if something attached itself to you, followed you home from the cemetery, and that thing is blocking your connection to Jeffrey. And your ponytail was cut off and your feet were wet. What is happening? This was a crazy story. I can't wait to hear everybody's thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for sharing your story. This one is called A Strange Tale from South Africa. Could it be a glitch in the Matrix? Hi, Auntie Matrix. Hi. I hope this email finds you well. I'm a big fan of your TikTok videos about glitches in the Matrix and all things weird and unexplainable. Your content has been a source of fascination for me, and I couldn't resist sharing my own story with you. Firstly, let me express my admiration for your work all the way from South Africa. Now, about my story. I must issue a trigger warning as it involves some challenging experiences from my past. My childhood was marked by the presence of an abusive father, resulting in frequent bruises and missed school days. Oh my goodness. My tale begins in a small mining company when I was little. And later we moved to a new location approximately 6 hours and 30 minutes of driving away. It was there that I forged a deep friendship with a childhood bestie. However, at the age of 11 or 12, my parents divorced, and my mother, brother, and I relocated to a place about 5 hours and 30 minutes of driving from my dad's location. A custody battle ensued, leading me back to my dad's house. Due to my father's abuse, I eventually left home, and a social worker placed me in a children's home in the area. Later, I returned to my mother's home. Now, here's where things take a bewildering turn. I've spent years trying to reconnect with people from my past, my childhood best friend, the other children in the home, neighbors, and even a family friend of my dad's. Strangely, none of these individuals seem to exist anymore. I've been searching for months, but there's no trace of them. My mother and brother remember those times, and my mother still has contact with some of her old friends, but everyone I knew seems to have vanished. How is this possible? To add to the mystery, the location of the children's home that I remember is drastically different from what I see on Google Maps. It used to be single-story buildings, but now they appear as double stories. The high school I attended suddenly now has a swimming pool, which was not there during my time. It doesn't make sense, especially considering that South African schools tend to close their pools rather than build new ones. My childhood best friend's family also had an uncommon surname, but even if she married, I can't find anyone with that surname on Facebook. I even dated her brother for a while, and he seems to have disappeared too. It's as if they never existed. Now here's the last part, and perhaps the most perplexing part. When I first returned to my mother's home, there was a sweet blue-eyed blonde girl in my class. But she disappeared from school, and when I asked about her, the other kids acted as if I was crazy because they claimed not to know any child by that name. During my quest for answers, I discovered a woman about 15 years older than me with the exact same name as the missing girl, and she even looks like her, albeit with black hair, but she lives in the location where my dad lived and I lived during my time in the children's home. I went on Google Maps to retrace my childhood memories, and the results were baffling. The first family home we had is situated in a completely different street from what I remember, and the second family home, while in the same location, looks quite different now. Specifically, the second home had a large porch, but according to Google Maps, the porch appears smaller with space only for a love seat. Strangely, when we lived there, we could have comfortably placed 3 love seats. These discrepancies only deepen the mystery of the changes in my past. What adds to the peculiarity of the situation is that my father had always drilled into us the importance of knowing and remembering facts like addresses, locations, names, and directions. He placed a high value on security and made sure that we could escape and remember directions in case of emergencies or kidnappings. With this background, it's even more bewildering that I can't find any trace of the people and places that I remember so vividly. I'm left with a myriad of questions. Could years of abuse have triggered false memories of people and places I once knew? Did I somehow switch lives with someone else? Is it possible that I'm older than I believe? Or worst of all, am I simply losing my mind? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this bizarre tale. Your perspective on glitches in the Matrix and the unexplainable could shed some light on these perplexing experiences. Okay, first of all, I want to tell you, you are not losing your mind, and we believe you. It sounds to me like something happened in which you switched timelines. There was a glitch in the Matrix and you switched timelines. Now, when you switch, I'm not sure, but I want to say it was after you returned to your mom's home and you met that little girl in the class, because then apparently she was all of a sudden not there anymore and she was older. So I'm going to say maybe something happened in there where you switched. That looks like it might be the source of the switch to me. Why you switched, I'm not really sure. I don't know if something happened in there to cause a quantum immortality event where you died in that timeline and you switched to a very similar near timeline, but not similar enough, obviously, because you're realizing things are different. Or if there's another reason for the switch, another thing triggered it. I also want to ask you, what year was that? What year was that when the blonde-eyed girl was there and then she wasn't there? Was it by any chance 2012? I'm asking that because that's when CERN turned on the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, and we apparently switched timelines and switched into another universe. That's where all the Mandela effects come from. We've talked about this before, but it definitely seems like to me that you switched timelines. I'm wondering, after that happened, right after the blonde girl was all of a sudden not there, you were back at your mom's, did your life get better after that? Like, did you have any more issues after that, or were you good? Did your life seem to be better after that? So maybe you switched into a better timeline to get away from all the abuse and the bad things? I'm not really sure. These are just my theories. I want to hear your theories in the comments, and thank you so much for sharing your story. This one is called My Dating App Car Accident Glitch. Hi, Auntie Matrix. Hi. I've been thinking about sharing this story for a while now, so I hope you enjoy it. In 2021, I had this dream one night that I was driving in the passenger seat of someone's car. I couldn't see who was driving, but we were engaged in conversation. It was nighttime and we were on some sort of back road. Nobody else was on the road. In the dream, me and the stranger pull up to a stop sign. We were still talking and not really paying attention to the road. All of a sudden, a silver car comes barreling straight at us out of nowhere. All you can see is headlights and the sound of their horn beeping frantically to get our attention. I scream as I see the car is going to hit us. The airbag deploys and the car starts smoking. My ears start ringing. I still can't see the driver, but I know that I'm hurt and they are probably hurt or dead. I woke up sweating. I thought it was kind of an odd dream for me, but then just brushed it off as a nightmare. About a month later, I'm on a dating app and I match with this guy. My first thought is, I know him from somewhere, but I cannot place it at all. We hit it off and talked online for a few weeks. He had a really busy school and work schedule, so it was hard to plan a typical date. One night, he messaged me and said he just wanted to finally meet and asked if we could go on a drive after he got out of school around 11 p.m. Even though that probably wasn't a super safe idea, I felt comfortable with him and wanted to finally meet, so I agreed. I told him to come by my house and pick me up. When he arrived at my house, he gets out to open my door and hugs me. As soon as we get in the car, he says, "You look so familiar, but I can't place it." I told him I've been feeling the same way since I saw his picture online. He wasn't familiar with this area, so he asked where we should drive to, and I suggested a back road that leads to a dock and some water. He is driving, and I'm in the passenger seat. As we're talking, we pull up to a stop sign. Again, there's no one on the road. It's around midnight now. All of a sudden, I hear a loud, aggressive honking noise just like my dream, and I look up. The same gray car from my dream appears out of nowhere and is barreling towards us. He is still distracted and talking to me. I realize what is happening and I yell at him to hit the gas and grab the wheel and jerk the car to the left. We narrowly miss the car. Freaked out, we look around to see if the other car is okay, but there is no one there again. It's just us alone on the road. I'm scared now because I realize the dream I had months ago just came true. I don't know how to explain this to him since it is our first hangout and I really liked him. I asked him to just take me home. To this day, I am still convinced that we were seriously injured or died in the dream version. We probably looked familiar to each other because it already happened in another timeline. Yes! I think this was our chance to have a different ending and not get hurt. Another freaky thing to add, when I was checking out his Instagram after the car event happened, I noticed that we both had pictures on our Instagram accounts on 2 separate days showing that we were at the same places on the same days. This was months before we ever met or hung out. One was a restaurant and one was the beach. Mind you, we live about 45 minutes away from each other. The restaurant was like an hour-and-a-half drive from me, so it's not someplace I ever normally visit. So running into each other twice and not even knowing it is super weird. After the car accident, we decided to hang out again and go to a beach by my house. While sitting at the beach, he showed me his arm tattoos. He had a whole ocean animal-themed sleeve with a shark by his shoulder. But a few weeks later, he sent me a picture of himself and the shark tattoo was gone. And it was something else in black and white. He still has the rest of the sleeve. I asked him where the shark tattoo went and if he got a cover-up tattoo. He swears to this day he never had a shark tattoo and doesn't really remember going to the beach with me that day. To be honest, he probably thinks I'm an absolute nutterbutter at this point. We're still friends, but I'm definitely a little freaked out by all of this. I'm just happy I got a second chance that day in the car. Okay, this one is crazy. Okay, that's immediately what I thought, was that you met in another timeline and that your dream was actually a previous timeline that you were just in which you did get in the accident. And then you swapped over, maybe quantum immortality, you swapped over to a new timeline after you both died. But if that's true, did you switch a second time because of the tattoo? And why would you switch a second time? This is also interesting. I love these kind of timeline switch, glitch in the matrix stories. I can't wait to hear everyone's opinions in the comments. Let us know what you think. And thank you so much for sharing this story. This one is called My Baby Disappeared. Hey, Auntie Matrix. Hi. So I was unsure if I should even send this since I still get super freaked out about it, but I figured maybe someone has had a similar experience or can explain why this happened. I've had 4 kids, so I feel like I know what's normal when it comes to kids. After I had my 4th and the 3 others were with my sister, I was at home doing laundry and cleaning the house. The baby was only 2 months at the time and sleeping in his bassinet. I was on my 3rd cup of coffee and decided to go check on him since it had been about 30 minutes since I set him down, and me being paranoid about infant death syndrome and normal mother paranoia, I wanted to make sure that he was okay and still breathing. I go into our bedroom, which is right next to the living room, so there's no way anyone could come to get him without me seeing. I go and check on him and he's gone. Not in the bassinet and nowhere to be found. I start panicking because there's no way that he could have moved or have been moved by anyone since I was the only one home. I started yelling his name and checking everywhere that a baby could be, even though I know it's physically impossible for him to have been moved. As I'm freaking out, I call my husband and I tell him the baby is gone and I can't find him. My husband says he will be home soon and to keep looking. All of a sudden, I hear crying in the bedroom, and as I enter, I see my son in his bassinet crying. I'm hysterical at this point and wondering if I just imagined him being gone or was it just brain fog from having 4 kids, but I specifically remember feeling the bassinet and looking under it and all around it and not finding him anywhere. The craziest part is when I called my husband back to tell him I found the baby, he seemed confused and said that I did call him, but all he could hear was my voice going in and out of service. We live in the country, so we lose service often, and he never said he was coming home and didn't even know our son was missing. Oh my God, I have chills right now. All in all, I still have a feeling of dread that this might happen again, but it hasn't, and I can't come up with a rational explanation as to why or how this happened. Not to make light of this, but I immediately thought about Jack from The Incredibles and how he just like poof disappears and has all those powers. That was like my first thought, and I was like, no, the baby doesn't have powers, Jessica. Or does the baby have powers? This is so weird and crazy, especially because of the husband part. Like, the baby was gone. You called your husband. He was like, oh my God, I'm coming home. Keep looking. But then the baby wasn't gone. And then you did call your husband, but he couldn't hear anything. Like, what? Did the baby like temporarily go into a different dimension or timeline? Were you both there and you were calling from that other? No, that doesn't make any sense. Did you? Oh, wait. Did you somehow bleed into a different timeline for a second? In that timeline, you did not have a baby and you were calling your husband from that timeline, which is why he couldn't hear you and it sounded all weird. That's my best theory right now. I need to hear everyone else's theories in the comments. Please let me know what you think happened here. This was a crazy story. Thank you so much for sharing, and hold on to your baby. As a mom, that's so scary. This one is just called, Have I Got a Story for You? Hi, Auntie Matrix. Hi. So this story happened when I was about 11 or 12. At the time, my dad had just remarried and I got introduced to a whole new family. My stepmom owned a couple of horses, but they were boarded in a little town about an hour away from where we lived. These people boarded many horses and would often develop close relationships with the people that they offered their services to. One of the families that also had their horses there had this little girl, Summer, who was about my age. One weekend, Summer decided that she wanted to have her birthday party / slumber party at their house, the couple who boarded the horses, and she invited me along with my stepsisters. She also invited a couple of her friends from school. When the night began, we did all the things you'd expect at a slumber party for girls. We had snacks, we laughed, we had cake, and then she opened her presents. One of her other friends had gotten Summer a glow-in-the-dark Ouija board. No! All of us were nervous, but having heard lots of stories from other homeowners about really spooky things that had happened in this house, we figured, screw it, let's do it. But man, were we in for a crazy night. We started off playing with the board like normal and really didn't get anything. We then decided to play the all too popular game, Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board, and while we were doing that, lights started to flicker around the room we were in. Shortly after that, the owners, who also let us in on a little secret that they dabbled in a little bit of witchcraft, they wanted to do a whole seance, and of course, we were all both nervous and excited, so we all agreed. Mind you, as a person in her 30s now, it all seems super weird that these adults were willing to do this with a bunch of children, but hey, those were much different times. Let me paint a picture for you as to what their house looked like. When you walked into the side door, you were immediately met with the kitchen. If you continued straight on, there's a little dining nook to the left, and then straight ahead opened up into a huge living room. To the left is their front door that was never used, and a massive picture window that really had no curtains, so you could see out into the entire field that their house sits on. Their couch sat on the opposite wall right in front of the window. To the right, when you walk into the living room, is a split staircase. If you go down, it leads to the room that we played the games in, along with the bedroom that we were supposed to sleep in that night. If you go upstairs, it leads to the bathrooms and the owner's bedroom. On the handrail to the stairs was horse belts tied onto it as a decoration. That is important later. Now, before I get into the real crazy stuff, these people did not have neighbors. They lived on their own land and they had a lot of it. Their driveway was at least a mile long and you were alerted every time someone came up by their dogs, so it would have been very hard for someone to be sneaking around unheard or unseen. Okay, back to it. Next to the couch on both sides sat end tables and both of them had matching lamps. All of us girls sat on the couch, including the wife of the couple. The husband sat with his back to the big window facing us. He had placed the Ouija board on the coffee table with a blue candle in the middle of it and the planchette on top of the candle. He began by saying a sort of protection prayer and then started calling out to spirits. Okay, at least these people are doing a protection prayer. At that time, they also had two of the tall, skinny candles on both tables next to the lamps. Both of those candles blew out almost immediately, and it sounded like the whole room came alive. There was heavy stomping happening above us. The floor under us was shaking with sounds of banging. The front door was rattling, and the bells were going nuts. At that time, the husband hollered out for it to stop, and it did, except it didn't last too long. Both lamps turned on and began flickering, and a small ball rolled from down the hallway like it came from the kitchen and into the living room where we all sat. The front door that had been rattling wasn't like a normal door. It was a double door with iron handles as the doorknob, and it locked by pushing a little mechanism up and over the ceiling. After the lamp stopped flickering, the door began rattling fiercely, and then all of us watched as both locks simultaneously turned and dropped, and the front door opened. There was absolutely nobody there. After this, we all decided to stop, but the rest of the night, little things were still happening. It was the most intense night I've ever witnessed. The next morning, after my oldest stepsister and I packed up all our things, we were the only ones in the house as everyone else was outside at the house barn about 50 feet away from the house. We were just about to go join everyone else and put our things in our parents' car when we heard a very loud scream from a man echo through the house. The moment we heard it, we took off running out to the door, and at that exact moment, their dogs began fighting. It all happened out of nowhere. Needless to say, we never stayed there again, and I wouldn't step foot in that house after that. It was one of the scariest nights of my life. Thanks for reading. I love your Glitch in the Matrix stories. Oh my God, I was like super intense. That was crazy. No wonder you didn't go back there. What was going on in there, man? It's weird that you didn't like experience or feel any crazy energy or any spirits or anything before that. And as soon as they like opened it up, it was just like the whole house went nuts. That's so crazy. It was a great story. Thank you so much for sharing. This one is called Possession, Body Hopping, Get Outed, What the Fuck? Hi, Auntie Matrix girl. Hi. So when I was 20 years old, black female, 3 years into university, I decided to take a gap year break and was swiping on Tinder to find friends to hang out with back in my hometown. I ended up dating this guy who was a producer and a web developer who recently quit from a large tech company and was very wealthy. We quickly became attached and he asked me to move in within a month. This was pre-COVID. It was a different time. Don't judge. Also, yes, he was white. Immediately, he was really invested in my Reiki healing and holistic practices. Bringing me clients and helping his friends/family work through issues and trauma, I began to feel random, unexplainable, intense sensations and heavy energy from around him that lingered in rooms when he left. He began acting strange and more hypersexual than usual, but I brushed it off. One night in bed together, laying down, I was having trouble sleeping, so I decided to read a mindfulness book of some sort that he had on the nightstand, using the moonlight and streetlights outside the window to read. All of a sudden, he sat up slowly, staring straight ahead, like his upper half arose like a zombie from a grave, eyes buck wide open, not blinking, like he was clearly looking at something and I wasn't seeing it. His body was stiff, but his head slowly turned to me, still not blinking. I saw his iris color had disappeared. The thing I loved the most about him that stood out was his powder blue eyes. I wave my hand in front of his face and say, "Are you okay?" No reaction. He lays back down slowly. Again, his movements are eerily slow. I wait until the sun comes up and finally sleep. He tells me he had a strange dream that he was walking around the loft and there were people casually phasing through our walls last night. Right. I told him what he did, and of course he has no recollection of sitting up and scaring the life out of me. 6 months go by of unfortunate weird events. His family was openly uncomfortable with my race and upset that we were showing up to family events in the group chat, but literally competing to spend time with me and gloating to each other about who was more acquainted with me. Very much Get Out vibes. Sex became very aggressive and almost hostile, a little odd, but I'm a pain freak, so no red flags still. I was cooking dinner one night and my arm had shooting burning pain and gave out completely while serving hot curry to our guests, burning my feet. Later that night during sex, he said there was a shooting burning pain through his beehole and fell limp mid-action. We got a rescue puppy that same week. His mom came to visit me alone and brought our dog treats and toys, etc. Soon after the dog was hit by a car. After freaking out and randomly running into the street unprovoked, he told his mom what happened, a phone call crying. She says he's a failure and he's obsessed with black girls and is not welcome in her family anymore. His pupils were black again, y'all. Mind you, this is a white man with blue eyes. He threatened to unalive himself and started acting erratic. I grabbed the broom and whacked him over the head. He escaped the loft and ran out into traffic. I called the police. This isn't even the crazy part. What? How is this not the crazy part? He was not high, we did not smoke weed or consume alcohol or anything at all. Hours go by and he returns confused with no memory of me bonking him on the head or freaking out. The next day, his account is down like $200K and all his savings were gone. He spooked because there was no proof of him spending anything, nor did I have or want access to that kind of information. He's crying and I'm like, look, we're going to go out and get you some new clients together and work on building your savings back up. We drive to a local bike shop with no online presence and he gets out and goes to make a marketing development offer. Typically making $20K monthly with these jobs, he'd ask for a $2K down payment. I told him a while ago he was worth $5K upfront because he's great at what he does and the return they see is worth it. I get really overwhelmed thinking that it might not go well, so I start hitting the dashboard and yelling, "Universe, just do this for me and I'll never mock you again. Show me." At the top of my lungs, it was like I had cracked emotionally after so much buildup. I pass out from exhaustion and screaming. At the time, I'm having what seems to me a fever/stress dream. I walk out of my body. I am phasing through the wall of the bike shop and step directly into this man from behind, and I'm seeing my boyfriend through this guy I've never met or seen. Like full avatar mode. I see my skin is white. I have a beard. I'm clearly dreaming, right? Like astral projecting, and I'm aware that I'm dreaming and I can't control my actions. Everything goes black. I wake up to him smiling, shaking me, saying that he got the down payment, but it was super weird, like he was taken over, being controlled by someone else. He said the guy stood there and froze for like 30 seconds, blanked out mid-conversation they were actively engaged in, and suddenly said with no emotion, robot-like, turned his head to him and said, "How much is the down payment?" $5,000, and pulls the money from the register without looking down. Maintaining eye contact with super dark pupils, almost black eyes, he says. He showed him the plans for expansion, etc., and his personality completely changed from cool, tatted biker dude to a dull, lifeless, dry-talking NPC. We stared at each other in silence and awe before pulling off while I processed his experience. He laughed and shrugged and took me to my favorite restaurant and ordered for me. He kept thanking me for coming and motivating him to get back on track immediately. I didn't say anything for the rest of the day because I was confused and creeped out by what he saw. I didn't mention my dream. I just told him that I was drained from the past couple of days and needed to rest now that he was in a better headspace. Since that day, he asked if I can come to every potential client and nap in the car for good luck, and he needed me or else he would fail. Did I freaking possess someone unintentionally? Did the universe scare me into a believer? Or was I Get Outed? Auntie Matrix and community, please help. Okay, first of all, I want to say I've never seen the movie Get Out, so I cannot weigh in on that portion of it or what this might mean as far as that goes. I have no idea. It certainly sounds like you unintentionally possessed somebody, but the weird thing is that the eyes were black, which is normally indicative of a demon, right? And you're not a demon. Are you a demon and you don't know it? But also, this was happening to your boyfriend, the black eyes and the weird stuff that he didn't remember doing before this. So if you unintentionally possessed a person, who unintentionally possessed him, unless someone didn't unintentionally possess, unless that was a demon or an evil entity that possessed him, maybe it took you to possess that person. I literally don't know. This is crazy. I need to hear, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for sharing this crazy story. This one is called System Error. Back in 2018, I was going to college. College in the UK is 2 years of studying after secondary school, usually at age 16 to 18, in a larger town further over from where I lived. It took me 2 buses and a short walk to get onto campus, and the same short walk and 2 buses to get home. The first bus would take me early morning from my village to a bus station where I got the second bus into town and walked onto campus. I'd have classes from 9 a.m. to 3 or sometimes 4 p.m., and then by the time I got home, it would be somewhere between 5 and 6 p.m. This is where the weird matrix glitching situation happened. My alarm on my phone rang and I got up, got washed, dressed, grabbed my class notes, and went to college. It was Thursday, so I had sociology class, literature class, a secondary catch-up sociology class, lunch, and a spare hour period, and then philosophy. I also stayed back an extra hour to do a coursework class, so my Thursdays were pretty packed, and I tend to get to the bus station on my route home as everyone was leaving work from the nearby retail center, so it was always majorly busy in the bus station and on the buses as well. I have anxiety and a learning disorder, so I'm not great at dealing with people. I always rode the bus with my headphones on and kept my attention out the window to try to keep myself grounded, especially when I knew that the buses would be busy. Thursdays, as I said, were always busy, so I got on the bus from near campus, heading out of town and towards the bus station. I hadn't been paying attention to anyone getting on or off the bus, but I know that it stopped at most, if not all, of the bus stops along the route. It wasn't until the bus started pulling into the bus station that I paused my music and headed to the front doors to the bus to get off. But the doors didn't open. The bus was just sat in the station bay, and I turned around to try to ask the driver what was wrong, but as I turned, I found that there was no bus driver. In actuality, there was no one on the bus at all. I stood for a moment looking around, knowing that it's seconds before I had heard the voices of other people on the bus and no one had been in front of me when I got up to leave the bus, but I was totally alone and it was eerily quiet. In a bit of a panic, but mostly really confused, I managed to manually push the bus doors open and stepped out to find the bus station also totally empty. It was like one of those post-apocalyptic movie scenes. Everything looked like it had this gray hue over it. And although there were no people in the station, there were abandoned buildings like newspapers and bags, push chairs like props on a set just left in their places for actors returning later. Then the bus station Tannoy started making announcements. Error in the system. Functional halt. Subject malfunction. Subject conscious. Subject reset start. What is happening right now? That freaked me out completely. The bus station doors slammed shut when I ran for them, and the whole area seemed like it was shaking. I knew I was being forced to forget that something had gone wrong and I wasn't meant to be seeing any of it. I woke up then, in my bed, completely panicked and terrified. It all felt real. I'm sure it was real. I calmed myself down a bit, but not enough to go back to sleep, so I just stayed in bed processing it all until I absolutely had to get out of bed to answer my alarm. It was Thursday again. And the reason I know it was real is because my class notes for that day were already in my books, including a post-it note from one of my tutors marking down a meeting for the following Monday. I didn't want whatever that reset thing was in my dream to happen again, so I kept quiet. I didn't acknowledge any of it out loud or talk to anyone about it because the whole feeling of knowing someone was coming to get me and that I was being watched to make sure that I didn't malfunction again had me completely freaked out. The day was the same as the dream, but I felt like I had to change it a little, like I had to go out of my way to make sure I mix up the flow somehow so that I didn't end up in that empty bus station. I didn't go to my coursework class and instead opted for emailing my tutor who gave me the appointment time and place from the dream post-it note for the following Monday. I even rang my mom and convinced her to come pick me up and take a drive to our favorite beach just to make sure that I absolutely avoided the bus station. Nothing like that has ever happened again, and I'm always left wondering if it was a surreal dream, an actual system in the Matrix error, or if I ended up in the wrong timeline or universe or something. I have no idea, but it scared me. Obviously, I'm going to tell you that I believe you and that I don't think this was a dream. What was it? I have no idea. It sounded like some weird glitch in the Matrix, and then they reset you. Error in the system, subject malfunction, subject conscious, subject reset, start. Like what? This is so crazy. I need to know what you guys think. Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for sharing this awesomely weird story. This was a really good one. This one is called Footsteps at 1 a.m. and a Shutdown Children's Hospital. Hi. So when I was really young, like 4, this super creepy / crazy thing happened to my dad. When my dad tells this story to this day, he will still get chills. My dad used to work at a company in the rural town that we lived in, and it recently came out that where the company was stationed, the building used to be a children's hospital that had been shut down 50-ish years prior to these events and repurposed. And if that's not creepy enough, nobody still alive knows why it shut down. All anyone knows is that over half the children staying there died suddenly. What? Okay, I was not expecting that. So my dad was working overtime super late. We're talking like 1 a.m. He's just sitting at his desk and then all of a sudden he starts hearing footsteps, multiple footsteps. They sound like they're coming from the floor above him, but my dad is the only one in this entire building. All the doors are locked and my dad was the only one with the after hours key code. He kind of brushes it off as he's just super tired, but it happened again. Only this time, it sounded like the footsteps were running, and he heard children laughing. So he grabs the biggest flashlight he can find, a PVC pipe, and goes upstairs to see if he can find anything. As he's climbing the stairs, the lights start flickering. He brushed it off like nothing, thinking that the lights were just old, and continued on. When he reached the next floor, he tried to turn on the lights, only they wouldn't turn on. These lights had worked merely hours before, and the lights in the rest of the building worked. So my dad walked the hallway with the flashlight and found nothing. So he went back downstairs and continued working. About 20-ish minutes later, my dad hears the running again. Only this time the sound was multiplied, like the amount of feet had tripled. And instead of children laughing, it sounded like children sobbing and crying out in fear. Now, my dad is genuinely freaked out at this point, so he calls my mom, and my mom can hear this happening through the phone. As the sound came closer, like they're running towards him only 1 floor up, my dad basically tried to hide under his desk. As the running footsteps and the crying reached basically right above him, there was a boom, the most blood-curdling screams my dad said he has ever heard in his life, and the sound of manic laughter. When I tell you my dad, a full-grown man who watched horror movies for fun, was so terrified he wet himself, let's just say he never worked overtime that late again. I don't know about you, but I think that whatever happened that made that hospital shut down, the town tried to cover up because there are no records of that hospital closing or why it closed at all anywhere. And I think that my dad had a glimpse of what happened over 50 years ago that night. And get this, the date that this happened to my dad was the exact date that the hospital closed 54 years prior. Oh, that was a good ending story. My chills, I have chills. Clearly, I think the same thing that you did. Something bad happened in that hospital. They were covering it up. If there's no records of why it closed, what unalived all of those children? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Do you have chills like me? Also, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for sharing this creepy, crazy story. It was a great last story. That concludes our creepy compilation for today. If you enjoyed these stories and you want to hear more, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But if you want to keep it going right now, you can check out this video or this playlist.